November 8, 1942. Dawn. Outside Oran, French North Africa. The sea is slate gray, barely breathing. Landing craft slap against the surf with the dull, hollow sound of iron on bone. Diesel fumes hang low over the water as ramps drop and boots hit sand. Awkward at first, then faster, then running. You can hear men shouting over engines, canteens clanking, the rattle of loose webbing. Somewhere inland, a French 75 fires once, more startled than angry. Captain Robert C. Moore, U.S. Army, checks his watch as he wades ashore. He's 28, Iowa-born, a former high school math teacher who learned to salute barely a year ago. His men, clerks, mechanics, college kids fan out just like they were drilled to do. Rifles up, spacing imperfect but instinctive. None of them have been shot at before. None of them look like soldiers. At least, not the kind the German army respects. 200 miles east, in a converted villa overlooking Tunis, Oberstleutnant Hans von Bülow-Schwante studies a map pinned to corkboard. North Africa is supposed to be a sideshow. The Americans, newly arrived, are an unknown quantity, but not a worrying one. German intelligence files describe them in clipped, dismissive phrases: civilian army, unblooded, over-equipped, soft. Von Bülow-Schwante exhales cigarette smoke and allows himself a thin smile. He has fought Poles who rode into machine gun fire and French officers who quoted regulations while their lines collapsed. Compared to that, what threat could men raised on automobiles, refrigerators, and radio music pose? Reports begin to trickle in by mid-morning. American landings near Oran, Algiers, Casablanca. Sloppy, some say. Disorganized. Others note the speed, how quickly roads are seized, how efficiently supply dumps appear almost overnight. The contradictions are waved away. Quantity mistaken for quality. Wealth mistaken for strength. Back on the beach, Moore's company pushes inland. No brass bands, no dramatic charges. Just movement, halt, signal, advance. When resistance appears, it's dealt with cautiously. When orders are unclear, junior officers decide for themselves. Nobody waits long for permission. That detail, unnoticed at first, will matter later. In Berlin, analysts at Fremde Heere West, the intelligence arm of the German army, compile assessments of the American force. They note the lack of universal military tradition, the absence of hardened discipline. They compare U.S. troops to British regulars and German veterans and find them wanting. One officer writes that Americans fight like businessmen, concerned with comfort, reliant on material, lacking spiritual hardness. It is meant as an insult. It will age poorly. Weeks later, after skirmishes harden into battles across Tunisia's rocky wadis and olive groves, German units finally face Americans in sustained combat. The results seem to confirm early judgments. At places like Kasserine Pass, U.S. forces bend and sometimes break. Tanks are knocked out, units pull back in confusion. German officers nod knowingly. There it is, they think, just as expected. But war has a way of punishing shallow conclusions. After one engagement near Sidi Bouzid, a German reconnaissance unit overran an abandoned American command post. Maps are gathered, radios examined. Then someone finds a canvas satchel stuffed with booklets, thin, olive-drab covers, stamped War Department, training manuals. At first, they are dismissed as curiosities. The German army prides itself on doctrine, Auftragstaktik, mission command, but it also knows that paper does not equal performance. Still, an intelligence officer fluent in English begins to read. He doesn't skim, he studies. Page after page describes a force built not around rigid orders, but adaptability. Junior leaders are instructed to act independently when cut off. Supply officers are trained as tacticians. Logistics is not an afterthought, it is the backbone. There are diagrams not just of attacks, but of fuel distribution, vehicle maintenance, replacement pipelines. Most unsettling of all is the tone. The manuals assume chaos. They expect disruption. They teach soldiers to keep moving anyway. This is not the Army German intelligence thought it was. Meanwhile, Moore's company, now reduced by casualties and reinforced by strangers, is back on the line. They are tired, dirty, learning fast. When orders change, they don't panic. When radios fail, they improvise. Trucks arrive with ammunition and hot food even when the road is shelled. Somehow, the system keeps working. German officers begin to notice, not brilliance, not elegance, something worse, persistence. You can beat an enemy who follows rules. You can outmaneuver one who waits for orders. But an army that adapts, slowly at first, then relentlessly, is a different kind of problem. As the North African campaign grinds on, the Americans stop retreating. They start absorbing lessons at a terrifying rate, and back in intelligence offices from Tunis to Berlin, captured manuals circulate with red pencil notes in the margins. The question is no longer whether the Americans are soft, it's how long before they become unstoppable. The manuals are laid out on a long oak table in Tunis, their spines cracked, pages already smudged with North African dust. Oberstleutnant von Bülow-Schwant stands with his hands clasped behind his back as a junior intelligence officer, Lieutenant Karl Fischer, reads aloud selected passages, translating on the fly for the others in the room. Outside, engines rumble and the air smells of hot oil and citrus blossoms. Inside, the mood is tightening. Fischer taps a page with his pencil. This section, he says, is for company commanders. It instructs them to continue the mission even if higher headquarters is destroyed or unreachable. It assumes isolation. Von Bülow-Schwant frowns. That assumption alone is unusual. German doctrine values initiative, yes, but within a framework of professional military upbringing. These Americans are teaching it to former civilians. Another manual is opened. This one is thicker. Logistics. It describes something the Germans have never attempted at this scale. A system where supply does not simply follow the front but anticipates it. Fuel consumption charts, vehicle recovery protocols, pre-packed replacement units. Entire chapters devoted to keeping men fed, vehicles running, and ammunition flowing under fire. Too much paperwork, someone mutters, but Fischer shakes his head. Sir, this is not bureaucracy. This is preparation for disorder. The room goes quiet. Captured equipment has already hinted at this reality. American trucks appear everywhere. 6x6s hauling artillery, fuel tankers pushing forward even as shells land nearby. When one route is cut, another opens. When depots are bombed, replacements arrive faster than expected. The Germans destroy an American unit, only to face it again weeks later, reconstituted, reinforced, and better led. Von Bülow-Schwant recalls an engagement near Gafsa. His battalion had inflicted heavy losses. Any other army would have needed months to recover. The Americans were back in days. At Kasserine, German officers had watched USPI units withdraw, chaotically. But they had also watched them reform, reorganize, and return, not as the same army, but as a corrected one. The manuals explain how. They emphasize after-action review. Failures are dissected without ceremony. Junior officers are encouraged to criticize plans, including those of their superiors. Promotions are tied not to seniority, but performance. Mistakes are not hidden. They are studied. This, too, is unsettling. In one passage, underlined in red, a sentence stands out. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Leaders must be prepared to act on intent, not instruction. Von Bülow-Schwant reads it twice. He had assumed Americans lacked Auftragstaktik. Instead, they had industrialized it. On the front lines, the effects are becoming visible. Captain Moore, now a major after his predecessor was killed, stands beside a battered Sherman tank near El Guitar. The tank's crew is patching a damaged track using parts scavenged from a wrecked vehicle. Moore doesn't order them to stop. He doesn't need to. The manual already told them what matters. Mobility equals survival. Artillery support arrives on time. Air cover appears when requested. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but reliably. When Moore's unit encounters German anti-tank guns dug into rocky ground, they don't charge. They probe. They pull back. They call for fire. They adapt. German officers watching through binoculars feel something unfamiliar, pressure. These Americans are not tactically superior, not yet, but they are operationally resilient. Every engagement makes them sharper. Every loss feeds a system designed to learn. Back in Tunis, intelligent summaries change tone. Words like ineffective and unreliable disappear. They are replaced with phrases like rapidly improving and logistically dominant. Too late. The manuals also reveal something else, something strategic. The Americans are preparing for wars of distance and duration. Their doctrine assumes fighting across oceans, sustaining millions of men far from home. North Africa is not the goal. It is a proving ground. Von Bülow-Schwant realizes, with a cold clarity, that Germany is facing an enemy who plans to outlast it. Not through heroism, through systems. The German army excels at decisive blows, encirclements, shock, speed. But those strengths depend on precision and timing. The American manuals, by contrast, assume messiness. They are designed for a world where things go wrong, and keep going anyway. A staff officer quietly asks the question no one wants to voice. Herr Oberstleutnant, if this is how they train in peacetime, what will they be like after a year of war? No one answers. Weeks later, Rommel's forces begin to feel the weight of it. Fuel shortages worsen. Replacement tanks arrive, late or not at all. Meanwhile, American units grow thicker on the map. Their attacks are blunt, sometimes clumsy, but supported by overwhelming logistics and an unbreakable tempo. The manuals were not theoretical, they were blueprints, and the Germans are now fighting the finished product. Von Bolo-Schwante orders copies made, summaries sent to Berlin. He knows doctrine when he sees it. He also knows when an assumption has failed. The Americans were never soft. They were unfinished. March 23, 1943. El Guitar Pass, Tunisia. The ground shakes before the German infantry sees anything. A low thunder rolls through the valley, steady and mechanical. Not the sharp crack of artillery, but the deep vibration of engines. Dozens of them. Sherman tanks crest the ridgeline in staggered formation, not charging, not elegant, but methodical. Behind them, artillery batteries adjust fire with stopwatch precision. Major Robert Moore crouches behind a rock outcrop, headset pressed to his ear. The radio hums with overlapping voices, some calm, some clipped, all moving fast. He doesn't wait for perfect clarity. The manuals never told him to. He gives the order. American artillery slams into the German anti-tank positions with brutal accuracy. Not because the guns are better, but because the coordination is faster. Forward observers, many of them former college students with weeks of combat experience now burned into muscle memory, call corrections without hesitation. German officers along the line recognize the pattern too late. This isn't the American army they faced at Kasserine. This one doesn't rush. It doesn't freeze, it responds. A Panzer IV fires and disables a Sherman. The crew bails out, smoke pouring from the engine compartment. Within minutes, another American tank slides forward to take its place. The advance doesn't stop. It barely slows. From a hilltop observation post, Hauptmann Ernst Keller lowers his binoculars. He has fought British units for years. He knows how they probe, how they hesitate. This is different. The Americans absorb losses like a sponge. They don't recoil, they redistribute. Keller radios for reinforcements. The reply crackles back. Unavailable. Fuel shortages, vehicle breakdowns, Luftwaffe support grounded. The system behind him is straining, the system in front of him is not. What German intelligence had missed, what the manuals made explicit, is that American combat power does not reside in individual brilliance. It resides in continuity. Units rotate, but doctrine remains. Officers fall, but intent survives. Equipment breaks, but replacements arrive. Even mistakes are processed efficiently. After El Guitar, Moore's battalion compiles after-action reports within hours. Tank infantry coordination flaws are listed bluntly. Artillery response times are charted. No one is punished for failure. They are corrected, retrained, redeployed. The German army, by contrast, is running out of room to adapt. Captured American manuals now circulate among senior officers in Italy and France. Some scoff, others read carefully. A general officer notes that the U.S. Army trains logisticians before tacticians, an inversion of European tradition. Another underlined sections about decentralized command and writes in the margin, dangerous. By summer, the Americans land in Sicily, July 10, 1943. Gela, Sicily. Pre-dawn. Once again it looks chaotic. Landing craft miss beaches. Units intermingle. Officers shout over gunfire and surf. German and Italian defenders initially believe the invasion is poorly coordinated. Then the supplies arrive. Trucks appear on beaches barely secured. Engineers build roads where none existed. Artillery is firing inland before some German units have even confirmed the landing. When counterattacks come, American units bend, but they don't snap. German officers notice something else now. American junior leaders act without fear of reprimand. A lieutenant reroutes a convoy on his own authority. A sergeant takes over a platoon when its officer is wounded and continues the advance. These actions are not exceptional. They are expected, because the manuals said so. In a headquarters near Messina, a German colonel flips through a translated American field manual yet again. He pauses at a passage describing replacement integration, how new soldiers are fed into veteran units deliberately, not grouped together, so experience spreads. It is, he realizes, an army designed to scale. Germany cannot scale anymore. By late 1943, as American forces prepare for landings in mainland Italy and begin massing in Britain, the tone of German assessments changes completely. Intelligence officers no longer compare Americans to British or French forces. They begin writing sentences that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The enemy learns faster than expected. The enemy compensates for tactical weakness with overwhelming operational depth. The enemy cannot be worn down through attrition alone. The manuals were never. Major Moore, now a lieutenant colonel, stands on a hillside in Italy watching another convoy snake forward. Fuel trucks, ambulances, ammunition carriers, bulldozers. The road behind him didn't exist a week ago. It was cut by engineers following diagrams printed years earlier, in peacetime, by men who assumed the worst and planned anyway. Moore doesn't think about doctrine. He thinks about tomorrow, about keeping momentum, about making sure his battalion is ready when the next order, or lack of one, comes down. Across Europe, German officers are beginning to understand the truth too late. You can defeat an army in battle, but defeating an army designed to learn, that is something else entirely. June 6, 1944, Normandy, France, 6:31 hours. The channel is violent. Gray water, white caps, smoke, fire. Landing craft buck and yaw as ramps drop into chaos. Machine gun fire scythes the surf. Men fall. Others keep moving. There is no clean formation, no elegant assault line, just fragments of units clawing forward through sand, steel, and blood. German officers watching from bunkers and command posts recognize the pattern now. Disorder followed by structure. On Omaha Beach, American units are shattered in the opening minutes. Officers are killed. Radios destroyed. Platoons disintegrate. It looks for a moment like collapse. Then the system activates. Sergeants take charge. Privates follow the nearest leader, regardless of rank. Small groups form around whoever has a radio, a map, or a sense of direction. They don't wait for a master plan. They follow intent. By mid-morning, German defenders are no longer facing a single beachhead. They are facing dozens of independent penetrations. Not a wave, but a swarm. This is not chaos. This is doctrine. In a command bunker near Colville, Oberst Friedrich Kessler receives reports that make no sense. Americans appearing behind positions that were never breached, units bypassing strong points instead of assaulting them, engineers cutting paths through minefields without orders. Kessler has read the manuals. He knows exactly what he's seeing. American doctrine does not seek perfect control, it seeks forward motion. If one unit stalls, another moves. If one road is blocked, another is built. If one commander falls, another steps forward. The Germans are trained to preserve structure. The Americans are trained to preserve momentum. By nightfall, the beachheads are secure, not because the landings were flawless, but because the system behind them could absorb failure faster than Germany could exploit it. In the days that follow, the same pattern repeats. Bocage hedgerows become killing zones. American units suffer losses. German defenders score tactical victories. But each fight ends the same way. The Americans adapt. New tank modifications appear. Infantry tactics change. Engineers develop solutions in days that would normally take months. Lessons are transmitted through the system at speed. Captured manuals are no longer needed. The doctrine is now visible in action. In a staff meeting outside Saint-Lô, a German general says quietly, "We are no longer fighting units. We are fighting a process." He is right. The Americans bring not just divisions, but factories, ports, railways, training pipelines, replacement systems, repair depots, medical networks, command schools, logistics hubs, all synchronized into a single war engine. German intelligence had dismissed comfort as weakness. They misunderstood. Comfort meant endurance. Civilian industry meant scalability. Decentralized command meant resilience. What looked like softness was actually flexibility. By late summer 1944, after the breakout from Normandy, the German army is in retreat, not rout retreat. Controlled, desperate, shrinking. American columns advance across France in rivers of steel and dust. Trucks move day and night. Fuel convoys stretch for miles. Engineers rebuild bridges as fast as they are destroyed. Units rotate, refit, return. The tempo never stops. German officers attempt counterstrokes. Some succeed tactically. None succeed strategically. Every delay is temporary. Every victory is local. The system absorbs it. In a captured headquarters near Reims, Allied intelligence officers find German reports analyzing U.S. doctrine. One line stands out: the American army is not optimized for perfection. It is optimized for continuity. It is the most accurate assessment Germany ever makes of its enemy. Major Moore, now Colonel Moore, crosses the Seine with his regiment. The river is clogged with pontoon bridges, traffic, boats, and debris. The crossing is messy, loud, inelegant. It works. German officers watching from a distance don't see a brilliant maneuver. They see inevitability. Because by now, the truth is undeniable. You cannot defeat an army built to replace its losses faster than you can inflict them. You cannot outmaneuver an army that does not depend on perfect plans. And you cannot psychologically break an army that expects chaos as normal. The training manuals were not technical documents. They were a philosophy, a belief that war is disorder, and that survival belongs to the force that organizes disorder better than its enemy. By the time Germany fully understands this, it is too late. The Americans are no longer learning. They are executing. December 16, 1944. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Before dawn, snow drifts through black trees. The forest is silent in that unnatural way that only comes before violence. American infantrymen huddle in foxholes, breath fogging the air, boots numb, rifles cold to the touch. They are tired, under strength, scattered. German artillery erupts without warning. The Battle of the Bulge begins in darkness and confusion, just as the German army intended. Surprise, shock, encirclement, decisive maneuver. It is the last expression of traditional German operational thinking. And at first, it works. American units are overrun. Roads clog with refugees and retreating vehicles. Command structures fracture. German armored spearheads punch deep into the line. German officers feel something they haven't felt in years. Hope. Once again, they believe they are seeing the Americans collapse under pressure. But the system activates. Emergency supply routes are established within hours. Traffic control units reroute entire divisions on frozen roads. Replacement units are rushed forward. Engineers repair bridges under fire. Medical evacuation chains operate non-stop in blizzard conditions. And most critically, command decentralizes instantly. Isolated American units don't wait to be rescued. They dig in. They delay. They block roads. They slow the advance just enough for the system behind them to reorganize. At Bastogne, surrounded and outnumbered, American paratroopers don't collapse. They endure. Not because of heroics alone, but because supply drops arrive. Communications persist. Command intent remains clear even when orders cannot. The German offensive begins to stall. Fuel runs low. Ammunition shortages appear. Replacement units don't arrive. The German system cannot sustain momentum. The American system can. By January 1945, the Bulge is erased. The last German strategic gamble has failed. In the ruins of Ardennes villages, German officers read the situation with brutal clarity. They are no longer being outfought. They are being outlasted. As Allied forces cross the Rhine, the war enters its final phase. German resistance becomes fragmented. Units fight fiercely, but without depth, without reserves, without recovery capacity. American doctrine now operates at full scale. Divisions rotate through the front. Logistics flow uninterrupted. Command schools produce officers faster than Germany can lose them. Medical evacuation saves wounded soldiers who would have died in earlier wars, returning them to the system. It is not just an army. It is an ecosystem. In April 1945, as American forces move through central Germany, a captured German staff bunker yields one final intelligence file. Inside are translated excerpts from early American training manuals, still preserved, still annotated. In the margins, next to one sentence about decentralized command and operational flexibility, a German officer had written years earlier, "This will become dangerous if tested in prolonged war." It had been tested, and it had passed. Colonel Robert Moore stands outside a shattered German town, watching columns move east. He has been in the war since North Africa. He has seen green soldiers become veterans, chaos become structure, confusion become confidence. He does not think about German intelligence assessments. He does not think about manuals, he thinks about home. The war ends weeks later. Germany collapses not in a single dramatic moment, but through exhaustion. Of fuel, of men, of systems, of time. And in the post-war years, German officers writing memoirs quietly revise their early judgments. They no longer call Americans soft. They call them something far more dangerous, systemic. Because what defeated Germany was not American toughness, or brilliance, or even courage alone. It was architecture. A military designed not for perfection, but for persistence. Not for elegance, but for endurance. Not for control, but for continuity. The training manuals were never just instructions. They were the blueprint of a war machine built to grow stronger the longer it fought. And by the time German intelligence truly understood that, the war was already lost.